Would you sign away your right to sue? Well, Disney Plus users apparently do when they subscribe to Disney's streaming service. Jeffrey Piccolo filed a wrongful death suit against Disney after his wife suffered a fatal allergic reaction at the Disney Springs restaurant. Now, Disney is trying to get the lawsuit filed in May tossed because the plaintiff purchased a trial subscription back in 2019 of Disney Plus. He must have skipped reading the fine print that says any user dispute must be, quote, resolved by individual binding arbitration.
Per Disney, Piccolo waived his right to sue when he purchased a trial subscription back in 2019. He must have skipped reading the fine print that says any user dispute must be resolved by individual binding arbitration in a motion filed in August, or on August 2nd. Specifically, in response to the theme park's argument, Piccolo's attorney wrote, quote, "The notion that terms agreed to by a consumer when creating a Disney Plus free trial account would forever bar that consumer's right to a jury trial in any dispute with any Disney affiliate or subsidiary is so outrageously unreasonable and unfair as to shook the judicial conscience, and this court should not enforce such an agreement." Piccolo is seeking more than $50,000 in damages in addition to mental pain and suffering loss of income and funeral expenses. Now, Rising reached out to Disney requesting comment, but as of filming, we have not heard back. So, shocking. I think that this seems like it should be totally illegal. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ensures it is illegal in financial contracts because they tried to include this in the fine print of people establishing bank accounts, that they would never sue that bank that they have an account with. They determined that that was unlawful and that people deserve their day in court. Crazy that that applies to banks but not Disney. It should just be the law of the land. I think this particular suit will make it so. It would be crazy if this stood in court.
And think about how many things we check yes to every single day with hundreds, if not thousands of pages that ain't nobody got time to read. And these companies take advantage of that by sneaking in all of these ridiculous clauses. And I would say Disney here is being completely idiotic from a PR and business perspective, because if they had just given the guy the $50,000 or the $100,000, whatever he was asking for, then none of this would have blown up into this major media story and they could have continued to rip people off. But they're so greedy, apparently, that they decided that this $50,000 or going to court was too much to ask for. So they had to point out that he signed these terms of service on the Disney Plus account. I mean, what a huge unforced error by them. But I guess that's what happens when you're just run by a bunch of soulless ghouls.
Imagine the outcome of this. A $50,000 problem just became like a multi-million-dollar problem. If people start seeing this and canceling their Disney Plus subscription, I think a lot of people would see this and say, you know, not I'm going to Disney and what if I get hurt and that's why I need to cancel my subscription, but just I don't support a company that does this to consumers. I don't want to give them any of my money. This is evil stuff. That's how I feel with this. The Washington Post reported this specific language. They say it's on the first page of the Disney Plus agreement. I didn't go into a Disney Plus agreement and read this, but supposedly the Washington Post did. It says, any dispute between you and us, except for small claims, which in most jurisdictions is like up to $10K, except for small claims, is subject to a class action waiver and must be resolved by individual binding arbitration. First page of the agreement. And are we supposed to read the fine print? I remember when the CFPB was negotiating, the terms of this. Chuck Schumer gave a speech and he said, do you expect a small family of people to read the multi-page agreement just to set up a bank account or get a mortgage on their house and see that they won't be able to sue if the bank does something illegal and harms them in some way? He's like, people don't have time to read this. The average working American is not sifting through their bank documents. They think the arrangement is, I deposit money, you keep it in the account, you can invest a part of it as long as I can come back and get my secured deposit because you have FDIC insurance. Like, that's the arrangement they think they're getting into. This extra stuff is a consumer protection concern.
I think it's important for people to understand as well that this is not a case where this guy's wife like deliberately ate something that she was allergic to. This is not the case of someone, twisting their ankle in the park and saying, I'm going to go after Disney. This woman ordered something off of the menu that was supposed to be allergen free, confirmed with the waitress or the chef or whoever that it did not have whatever allergen in it, and then was served the food that did in fact have the allergen in it. And unfortunately, she died from that allergic reaction. So this was due to some kind of negligence from Disney staff, which is what makes this, I think, a reasonable lawsuit to bring against the company. And unfortunately, over the past 5 years or so, Disney has just repeatedly proven itself to be a terrible company with really poor business practices. There was an audit done of their Reedy Creek arrangement in Florida about a year ago.
Crazy.
Totally crazy. Like, if people don't know the details of the Reedy Creek audit,
let's talk Reedy Creek.
Let's
Amber.
talk about it.
Thank God.
Because I wrote an article about this at the time. I got like an embargoed copy of the audit and I wrote about it, and I was blown away reading this document. So just for a 10,000 foot view.
Yeah.
Basically what was happening is that Reedy Creek is technically independent from Disney, except Disney effectively bribes all of the members of the Reedy Creek governing board to make sure that they are nice to Disney. So they would give millions of dollars worth of special park passes to Reedy Creek employees, significant discounts on cruises, food and merchandise, and they would handpick leadership through some shady land deals to make sure that the Reedy Creek board was completely in Disney's pocket. And this has been happening since the establishment of this sort of separate government since 1967. And Disney is the only company in the United States of America that enjoys this special privilege that is since being winded down by the DeSantis administration, which is one of the greatest things he's done as governor, is actually hold Disney accountable for all of this crony capitalism that they've been benefiting from for the past 60 years.
Yeah, I became obsessed with Reedy Creek because of their special ability to act like a municipality, like a city or a town, and issue bonds. So they can sell a bond to someone. They say, I'm going to invest $2,000 in Disney. They have a promised return after 10 or so years. This is something that's usually a power of a federal government, a state government, a town. There are corporate bonds as well. But this has to do with the land they own in Florida. And there's very chunky legislation in Florida that backs this up. This is why Ron DeSantis couldn't take away their independent status, because baked into that legislation that allowed them to issue bonds was that they had to absolve all of that debt before they were ever acquired. So that would mean that the state of Florida would have to raise taxes on their residents in order to cover that, to acquire their independent status or buy them out of it. And there were some calculations done by people who became way too obsessed with this. And that would be about $2,500 annually on average for a family of 4 in Florida that they would have to pay in order to get Disney out of their contract. Crazy that they convinced the legislator in Florida to basically give them forever status as an independent entity. This is a corporation in the United States of America, not subject, seemingly, to regulation by the federal government or state government, Ron DeSantis in this case. Crazy.
And Disney effectively lied when they were lobbying the government for this special privilege too, because it was predicated on the fact that they were going to build Epcot up as an actual community of people living there with grocery stores and fire departments and police stations and developments of single-family homes. And so they needed this jurisdictional independence because they were going to be basically creating a city. And of course, as we now know, they never actually created a city. There are practically no residents that live in Reedy Creek. It's all just theme parks. So Disney just enjoys all of these special tax benefits and this governance over their own property. And the land deals are incredibly insane because the legislation requires that landowners are given voting power over board members proportional to how many acres they own. Naturally, Disney owns pretty much all of the land, so they get to handpick board members. And the ones that they don't, on the land that they don't own, they would temporarily deed small plots of land to people that they wanted to serve on the board who they knew were going to be friendly to Disney, so that they would have the land ownership required to serve on the board. And so it's sort of this just like hand-picked Disney friends getting deeds of land so that they can go serve on Reedy Creek and pass policies that are good for Disney. And in exchange, they get park passes, cruises, discounts on food, merchandise, etc. And it's just this entire like circular bed of corruption.
Yeah, Benito Mussolini back in the day said fascism would more accurately be called corporatism and is the merging together of the corporation and the state. And so Disney needs to be regulated to the extent that the Supreme Court deems what is going on there unconstitutional, that a corporation is operating like a self-governing body, which is an increasingly common issue. Unfortunately, in the United States, we had Deb Fischer, the senator from Nebraska, the largest rail yard in the country. She takes a lot of money from the biggest railroads in the country and basically gave them the power to self-regulate. And we're seeing 4 derailments in Nebraska over the last month. Just a disaster whenever you have this kind of exchange and agreement. So we'll see what happens with this lawsuit. I hope it has implications that protect many other people from this and brings attention what Disney's been up to these days.
Me too. This is why it's so mind-blowing to me that some members of the Republican establishment are still so corporatist to a fault when we've seen how corporations in many cases are just as able to take advantage of Americans and their rights as the government and have increasingly asserted themselves as a legitimate danger to your individual liberties.
I agree. It doesn't just have to be called the government to be an infringement on your liberties or be bad. Yeah, we've got more Rising after this.